What's up, YouTube? What's up, patrons? What's up, subscribers? All of you people. So glad to be back with another installment of Bible Study with an Ex-Pastor. I think this is like our 13th one. I won't know for sure until I actually sit down and start designing the little thumbnail. Then I'll see which number the last one was. But I do think this one is 13. Oh, lucky number 13. And this has just been an incredible series, and I'm always so glad to have you with me in these premieres as we're all kind of walking through, unpacking, debriefing, and just having a lot of fun the whole way through. Who knew Bible study could be this fun, right? Also, I do want to say we started doing Sunday sessions. What was it? 2 weeks ago, last week. Well, we kind of did our official first Sunday session on Easter, right? How appropriate, right? Where we had an excellent conversation with Bossy from Bossy's Thoughts and the Apostate Sisters. I'm trying to think on Secular Sunday, did we have both of them? Because I know we did a patron party that same week. But I want to say the Secular Sunday, yes, we had both Patty and Nancy. And then we also had Tom Smith that Sunday. And so then a week after that, we started doing the Sunday sessions where it's just my wife and I sharing some things from our heart that we've been kind of thinking about and experimenting with when it comes to community and secular community over the past few years, different approaches we've done. And so we've kind of shared some, and that's the other thing, while sharing some things that we're thinking about and what's important to us and ways that we're looking at building and growing community. We're also sharing information with others who say, hey, I'm really interested in this idea of building secular community, but maybe I don't want to build community with you. Maybe I want to do it where I am. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's not always just that, ooh, I don't like you. Sometimes it's literally like, hey, but bro, like you're 10,000 miles away and it's going to take you a little minute, and I got faith in you and all, but it's going to take you a minute to get this way. So I want to get started here. So then maybe we'll end up growing towards each other. So that's one of the things, definitely being on this side of things as opposed to where I was. That's something that I'm a lot more open to, and I'm finding more people who are open to. So I don't have this need where everybody has to flock to me. Nor do I have this need where I feel like I have to flock to everybody. Instead, I want to support everything that's healthy, that's working, and that's beneficial for humanity. And then I want to do everything that I can that's supportive, healthy, and beneficial for humanity. I don't know if you can see behind me, but you can kind of see do the work, do it right, do your best, do the most. That's kind of the adage that we live by. And actually, I just realized now, I don't know if y'all can see it, but in my camera, I can actually see the projects that are listed behind the big words, like the bridge, which is the one that we're pretty much dedicating our Sundays to. Genesis, DODD World Group, that's literally who we are, and so on and so on. So, and this coming up Sunday, we're going to be talking about space and social impact. And when we say space, we're not talking about outer space, which we'll have those conversations too. But we're talking about creating space for people, creating safe space, soft space, secure space, and sound space, as we say. And that space where, you kind of verify information before you share it, But yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. We're going to talk about different ways that you can, as you're building community and as you're creating space for people to, whether it be space for people to deconvert, space for people to transition, space for people to explore new options, or just space for people to grow. As you are indeed creating that space, you want to kind of already in advance have it in your mind. How can we use this space to make social impact? And at the end of the day, to me, and I know this word may have some baggage to it, but to me, that's ministry, and ministry ultimately in my mind is just service to others. And so you don't have to have any superstitious or even religious attachments to minister to people. That's why some countries still have a prime minister or a minister of affairs, of a minister of finances, and so on and so on. It is a very, very much people-centric word. Okay. So that was one hell of an introduction, right? So Before we jump into this, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the alert notification bell, consider joining our community, consider volunteering, and check out our merch. Also, merch. Check out our merch. Also, if you haven't already, share these videos, man. And it doesn't have to just be this one. What I'd suggest, and this is just my advice, you don't have to take it. I'd go up and down my whole content list and just share everything. But then again, I may be biased. And of course, don't forget to comment and engage in the comments because Lord knows I'll be needing y'all help in these comments. Let me stop. All right. So last week we talked about Jacob, and this week we're picking right back up with Jacob. In this case, he is being sent away, apparently, which of course we kind of left off with that last week. His mama and him conspired against his brother, her own son, to take away the birthright, and now, you know, her son has been so damaged by this betrayal, this heinous act, that he wants to kill his brother. You know, now mind you, I really am not one for vengeance, only because it's in my mind, vengeance itself is counterproductive. So if I was Esau, instead of just wanting to kill Jacob, I would just literally want nothing to do with that family anymore. Yeah, I'm okay. Y'all are crazy. Y'all are wicked. I'll pass. I'll pass. Whether you did this out of weakness or wickedness, either way, it's not something I want to be associated with. You know, it's funny because I kind of used to think like that as a child, but um, people used to tell me that was like demonic thinking or devilish thinking or selfish thinking. And so I had kind of pushed that thinking to the back for a very long time. I mean, actually ended up being very detrimental to my mental health and my safety of mind, you know. And so now I'm just like, no, kind of like Fantasia. If you don't want me, then don't talk to me. Go ahead and free yourself. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, let's check in on Jacob and see what he has going on. So Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and commanded him, saying to him, "You shall not take a wife from the daughters of who? Canaan." I'm telling you, man, it's like it's Canaanites all the way down. That's been a theme lately. Have y'all noticed that all the way down? It's from a popular philosophy and book by the similar name, Turtles, all the way down. Very fascinating thought experiment, if you will. And so check it out if you get a chance. But so there's Canaan again, and remember, I always I like to highlight Canaan for several reasons. Well, number one, I'm just surprised by how many people, and such was I. I was one of these people, but I'm surprised by how many people who don't know that the Israelites are part, in a sense, of the Canaanites. You know, um, and yeah, I mean, there's just no way around it. It's like in the same way that you'd understand um, that the Jews are a part of the Israelites, right? They're one of the tribes of the Israelites, and you'd understand that the Israelites are part of a greater class or group of Hebrews, and then I want you to understand that the Hebrews then are part of a larger society of Canaanites. And this Canaanite culture is the larger culture that this Israelite culture or Hebraic culture is inclusive of. And so that's why you see a lot of not only just a lot of reference to the Canaanites, even though the reference seems to make them a distinct people, but the story does not read like the Canaanites are a distinct people. And so it seems like this idea that this is an entirely different group was more of a later theological um, addition or even presupposition, because the authors, while they do put great length in painting Canaanites as, you know, bad and evil, they don't go through great lengths to fully separate Israel from Canaan. As a matter of fact, the promised land for Israel um, is Canaan, because it's you know it's a longer story. So it's from a sociological perspective or even anthropological, it's a story about infighting. And so And I think that's why I named one of these videos "Division All the Way Down." These are the Canaanites dividing against themselves. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Okay, so it says, "Arise and go to Padan Aram." Sounds like somewhere in Star Wars. "To the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and from there take to yourself a wife from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother." So there's definitely some more incest here. And just like his father did, his father gets sent to Bethuel. That's really where that's where his mama comes from. His mama is one of Bethuel's daughters. So he's saying, "Hey, go to my daddy and get it." It's odd. Um, so may God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, so that you may become a multitude of peoples. Now, my memory is not as best, especially when it comes to stuff like this. But this may be the first place we ran into the phrase Almighty, because I know I've been trying to pay a great deal of attention to claims that are made in Scripture and when they're made. So that's why even when we were reading through Genesis chapters 1 through 5, while definitely having fun, I did try to paint this clear picture that at that moment in the text, this God had not called himself all powerful, all knowing, omniscient, omnipresent, or any of those things. And so while I did critique the text for not depicting this God as so, I also called out the balance of saying, but there has not been a claim as of yet that this God is any of those things. Now, because the stories that we've jumped into since chapter 5 and 6 have been more people centric than they have been this, external character, which is kind of the whole story here. It's about people. People are the main character. God is the side character. Um, yeah, God is the emergent character. Yeah, he's at the beginning in this, but he's only at the beginning. If you understand anything about scriptural development, the beginning is not added first. Genesis is not the oldest book of the Bible, nor is it the first book of the Bible. So if my memory serves me correctly, and someone is absolutely free to correct me here, I think it was Job. But now the difference is, because there's some funny things here, I can't remember if Job was the oldest written book or just the oldest depicted book. And so you have these problems. And the reason these problems exist is one of those things that I like to call out frequently is the disingenuousness of Christians who have subverted, if you will, I don't even know if that's the right word, but subverted um, this Jewish book, if you will, or this Hebraic book, as their own, and then have superimposed their own ideologies on the book as the book's intention, without properly getting acclimated with Jewish and Hebraic culture. And so there are a lot of things that are said by Christian scholars and Christian theologians, which honestly, I mean, again, though, like there's a lot of reasons. Like I could just be derogatory here and give you all the reasons that you shouldn't listen to a Christian theologian, but you know, you know, but specifically, if a Christian theologian wants to talk about the New Testament and theologicize, fine. That's cool. But when it comes to the Old Testament, I find it disingenuous to pretend like that book doesn't represent a culture that you're not the authority on. Like that book doesn't represent a culture that you've been informed on, that you've been acclimated on, that you've been acclimated with, and that has led to a lot of problems because the Old Testament and the New Testament, when it comes to this character of Jesus, are absolutely incongruent. I don't care what any of you say. Jesus doesn't exist in the Old Testament. He was not there. The characters of the Old Testament had no expectation of God to have a begotten son. They held no such beliefs. They had no even this concept of Messiah that we as I say we. I guess I'm not one of you no more. But Christians again just kind of took on, completely corrupted this idea of Messiah and made Messiah something that is a global figure when that's not quite what it is. Messiah is a local political figure, and every people group should have a Messiah until we get to a place of globalization, which is something that I struggle with as a black man. I struggle with the ideas of nationalism and globalism. Now, by one hand, I kind of think that globalism is the way. That's what I kind of think. I don't know that. I just kind of think that globalism is the way. But however, I also know that globalism creates a lot of problems, and that um, globalism can codify current states of affairs, and that could be dangerous. So it's specifically, I'll speak kind of the black community in America, which I think can be a lot can be said the same though for black communities in other places. Even on the continent, that we have to do a better job of getting economically grounded, having an economic foundation, so that we can, as long as this country is competitive, so that we can economically compete. And when I say economically compete, I think one of the things that people miss about these type of societies is that the best type of competition is contribution. Um, which means when you get people competing around contributing to things, which is why one of the questions was asked Sunday during the Sunday session is, well, do you want to build something different, or do you just want to support something that exists? And my answer was both and. Because the more people you have contributing to secular space, the more people you have contributing to free thinking or progressive community, the more options you create for people to do it. That's how something becomes normalized. That's how something becomes popularized. And I'm not of the belief that we should be building personally anything that kind of looks like a Catholic Church empire, where there's this bishop of all, and everything has to go through that. Forget any of the religious attachments of that, because I'm not so pedantic that I can't move past words and imagery, but it's not effective. I find decentralized communication and decentralized experimentation to be the most effective way to make something spread. And just for me, when I'm a part of something, I like to be a part of things that are progressive, that are effective, and that accelerate. Because I have some big ideas, I have some big plans. If you've read anything about the type of vision that my wife and I have, yeah, we ain't here to play with it. But yeah, so I don't know how I got on that rabbit trail, but I did though. I did though. So, but the point was, God here is almighty. I don't know how that was the point, but that was the launching pad that led me there. Is that for the first time, I think, and I could be wrong, I could have just missed it when we were so caught up in people stealing their birthrights and offering their daughters to be raped. I could have missed that part. But in this sense, it is may God Almighty. So this is now an all powerful God. This is a God who is indeed all powerful. Now, this is the first time it's being said. And of course, the character himself is not saying that I am almighty. Now, he may say it later. But I find that to be a very important thing to take into consideration, because like even Jesus himself never says I am God. He never says I am the Son of God in any distinction from anybody else. And quite a few people did not believe he was God. And then if God is good, then Jesus cannot be God. According to Jesus' own testimony, Jesus is not good. Speaking of which, I'm going to share with you a conversation that I had with a commenter in another video, just to highlight the audacity of ignorance. And I think that's probably one of my biggest problems with superstition. I have a lot of people that I engage with now who are not fully separated from religion, and I don't think any of them have I been like, hey, you need to separate from that in order to talk to me. And I don't think any of them have been like, hey, you need to believe in this in order to talk to me. It's just we've shared a similar fascination on a similar subject, right? Um, and so, but outside of that, I don't even know what I was getting to it there. I'll probably remember later. But anyway, God is he's almighty, So this first time I'm seeing this, he's gonna bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, so that you may become a multitude of people. And then may he also give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your descendants. Well, being that I am a descendant of Abraham, I should already have that blessing. But somehow, this is also a blessing that can be stolen and swiped. Swiper, no swiping. Mm. So make do all these things. May he also give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your descendants with you, so that you may possess the land where you will live as a stranger. So that sounds like stealing, but and that's kind of like the and I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but I'm gonna try it anyway. I could say this is setting them up for stealing because that's what it says. You're gonna possess a land that you're not foreign to, or that you're not. That's the wrong word. You're gonna possess a land that you are foreign to. You're gonna possess a land that's not yours. You're gonna possess a land that you're not native to, or that you're not indigenous to. So, on one sense, that sounds like, oh, this is thievery. But mm, this seems to be more like usurping. I don't know if usurpery is a word. I don't know. And I don't want to look it up right now. And as a person who has considered himself to be evolved, I just say whatever the hell I want to say. And if you know what it means, then that works. Yeah. But no, usurp. And the reason I use that word here is because Jacob is known as a usurper. And a usurper is not necessarily someone that steals per se. I mean, it still is a type of stealing, but it isn't a foreign theft. It is a theft from within. Which is pretty much what we see with Jacob and Esau. That's the I think could be the parallel to this story, is that Esau is sort of the parallel to Canaan. That Canaan is the older brother, in a sense. And mind you, I'm not just saying that just Jacob and Esau's story does that. I think that's what Isaac and Ishmael's story is doing. I think that's, we'll just start with Isaac and Ishmael. But Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, and I think we'll see the same thing with Joseph and his brothers. And that is this idea that the younger is despised by the older. And that is one of those things that's a pattern that is congruent, through almost throughout the entirety of of Christian scripture, combination of Old Testament and New Testament, because even this context of Jesus and John the Baptist, they are type of this. There's so much into that. So Malachi is about turning the hearts of the fathers back to the sons and the hearts of the sons to the fathers. But that's not necessarily what happens in the New Testament. In the New Testament, unless you're using what we'll just call a gap theory here, which means you're not talking about turning the current fathers' hearts to their current sons, but the heart of the ancestral fathers to the heart of the current sons, which would then, it would just be poetically useless at that moment. But the big point is that even when you get to the New Testament, there is still this further delineation and separation between the older and the younger. Even so much so with John the Baptist. John the Baptist says, "Hey, who's the older cousin? This has to be done." But then even that, you can go a little further down. Technically, Apostle Paul is the young apostle, not in age, but in the sense that he comes later, and just like Jacob usurps authority, right? Just like Jesus usurps authority, which I'm not necessarily calling Jesus a usurper, but you see how it works. And in many ways, I think Jewish theologians probably would call Jesus a usurper. All right, yeah, God is going to bless you, and you're going to go places, and then you're going to be a stranger. Then Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean. I think it's Aramean. Yeah, I don't think the E in Eastern languages says E. I think it's A there, and A is typically A. To Laban's, yep, read that part. The brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. So they definitely want you to know the incest is strong here. And I'm not trying to make these people feel bad because of their incest. Number one, they're either dead or they never existed before, so they can't hear what the fuck I'm saying. They're good. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take himself a wife from there. And that when he blessed him, he commanded him, saying, "You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, and that, oh, which means maybe it's Canaan. Yeah, anyway, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and had gone to Padan Aram. So Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan displeased his father Isaac, and Esau went to Ishmael and married, besides the wives that he had, Mahalath, the daughters of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Naboth. Okay. So Esau has a few wives, Yeah, Esau. Everybody's just, getting women left and right. Booty, 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 rocking everywhere, rocking everywhere. I guess what's going on. So, that's kind of condescending. Wives are not just about booty, and nobody should think that. It's fun to think sometimes, but no, no. All right. And that Jacob obeyed. I'm being serious there. I was being facetious, but the no part is serious. Like, don't reduce people like that. Okay, rabbit trail, and that is actually one of the one of the many things that kind of shook me out of my silent atheism is that I realized that I have quite a few friends that I've grown up with that, and I'm talking about male and female, that don't know how to value relationships. And when I say that, it's not just this idea of not knowing how to appreciate each other, which that is what it leads to. You won't know how to appreciate each other. And I'm not just saying you won't know how to be nice to each other. I'm saying you literally won't know how to add value to each other. And so I know a lot of people, who I grew up with who are somewhat in miserable, tumultuous relationships because they haven't felt it, I guess, necessary, which most haven't, to put purpose into your relationship. To say, one of the negative side effects of believing that there's a God who's super duper concerned about your sexual activity is that you then begin to reduce the act of marriage to permission for sex. And when in your mind, marriage becomes equivalent with sex, I think it, for many people, blinds them to the idea of purpose and partnership. And so, like, my wife and I realized one day that there are quite a few people in our community, and I don't want to make this derogatory. I just want to highlight this, as this is probably not the best way to make decisions. But there are quite a few people in our community who got married for really shallow reasons. And while some of them were able to make it work, when you really explore the definition of making it work in the Black community, it's not about work at all. It's just about lasting. So just because something lasted in us, to us, that means it worked. And I'm, again, not trying to make blanket statements, but keep in mind that I'm always talking from my perspective. And so from my perspective, it just becomes that, oh no, if it lasts, that's why this thing is like respect your elders, regardless of how horrible of people they are, simply because they've been here a long time. You're just supposed to automatically forget that they're horrible people. But that's the same thing we do with marriages. So even when I hear a lot of people saying, I want a marriage just like my grandparents, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I know your grandparents, and that shit was a shit show. It was a train wreck. Why the fuck would you want to mimic that? And that's because you're not critically engaging what marriage is, what marriage can be, and you're not even exercising the freedom to define what a healthy relationship should mean to you. And so ultimately, you end up getting married to somebody either just because you really, really, really want to have sex, or you get married to somebody over some other shallow reason, such as they could match their colors, which is Oh, yikes. I'm almost embarrassed to say, but that's a real thing. Like I had to do some video editing a few years ago for a church, and love the people. They're really great people, and it was a Valentine's Day thing, and they were interviewing couples, asking why they got together, and not one couple had a reason that I would say is a good reason. And just to be sure, they don't need my reason. It's not my life, you know. So this is observational, not controlling. I don't want to control their lives. I don't want to go to them and say, hey, all y'all should break up and divorce. But I was just like, oh man, what a pity. What a pity that you married somebody because they knew how to match an orange shirt with some orange shoes. You know, like, and I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. Again, my opinions don't matter there for you. But I pay attention to that stuff so I can kind of help give my children some insight and people who are interested. So, like, my wife and I, we kind of operate off the mindset that marriage is partnership. So, in that way, like, and we also believe that any relationship you're engaged in, there should be some type of purpose in that relationship. I may believe that more so than my wife because I think it probably makes me come off as a jackass to people sometimes. Like I have people, you know, who I used to be really close with that are probably not too happy with me because I don't waste as much time as I used to. So, you know, anytime someone's like, hey man, I'm gonna come over, and I'm like, oh yeah, come on over, man, let's just chill. And we just talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I do love to talk, I'm sure, as you can tell. But I looked at my wife after having a lot of these conversations, and I'm like, I think I think they're confused. And I would literally say stuff like this. I think they're talking about it just to talk about it. I'm talking about these things because I want to be active in these areas. I have friends today who still like message me like, "Hey man, there's this big event going on," you know. And I'm not saying I'm not interested in events in the long term, but like right now and literally for the past 5 years, I'm not interested in any of that, man. You know, but I make no apologies. I'm hyper productive, that's been incredibly freeing for me to realize that hey, I don't have to chill all the time just because there are a large segment of people who like to chill all the time. I part of becoming an atheist helped me realize that as cool as I am, I'm probably not that chill of a dude. I'm probably a little high strung for most people, you know, and that's okay. Like I don't have to dim myself down for people who aren't trying to do those things. And I don't have to disrespect people who are not trying to do those things. You know, I can choose to align with people who are trying to do those things. All right. So that was a long rabbit trail. All right. So basically, Jacob obeys his father and his mother, which that's an interesting word here because the same Jacob who is obeying his father and his mother was only obeying his mother earlier and was deceiving his father. You know? I don't know. So Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan. Oh, I saw we read that part. Yep, Jacob's dream. Ooh. Then Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he happened upon a particular place and spent the night there because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of the place and made it support for his head and lay down in that place. I remember preaching this. Ooh, I remember preaching this. Yes, and I can tell you. All right, so this might be a play-by-play type of situation right here. All right, because I remember I preached this at one of my mentors' church, which was actually my last mentor, Mike McClure Jr. at the Rock Church in Birmingham. And this was the first time that I had preached at his church. Not the last time, but the first time. And wow, like, you know, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but hope y'all can see I'm doing it. Yeah, like I did the dang thing. Message probably wasn't very healthy, but boy, was it entertaining. And since it was my mentor's church, and the name of his church at the time was The Rock, it's Rock City now, but at the time was The Rock, I named the message, I Got Blessed at The Rock. Yeah, that's crazy that I remember that. And this was also my first sermon that I engaged in this, in the um, cultural performance of hooping. And I'm I'm gonna make this comment, and this is going to displease some of you, but I just want to inform your ignorance, right? Just for some of you, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. But when I hear some of you make comments about, "Oh, I can't stand that type of preaching," um, that as a human being, you should understand by now that everything is not for you. Like that should be a standard. And so I don't like talking like that, and I don't like when people try to make that a point, because that is cultural. And so for you to take this cultural thing and say, "Oh, well, they're yelling and they're huffing, that's how you know they're being deceptive." No, that's a part of that. And mind you, for almost 15 years of my experience as a Christian, as a minister, I did not participate in those things, because I felt like, "Oh, though, you shouldn't have to do all of that," and I separated myself completely from the culture and the art form of Black preaching. But now, in the same way that I have an appreciation for other cultural expressions, whether they're expressions that correlate with me or not, I don't fix my mouth to attach negative stigma to somebody else's cultural expression. And I don't really engage comments like that, because to me, and maybe you may be able to prove me wrong, but I kind of find that highly offensive. Not saying that I'm offended, but I feel like that is something offensive. And just because it's offensive doesn't mean I have to be offended, but it is offensive. That's like when people say with Beyonce, "Well, that's not real country music." What the fuck is real country music? Shut the fuck up. All of these things are social constructs. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, are you really kidding me? You know? It's like people do real hip hops. Like, "Oh, this ain't real hip hop." What the fuck are you talking about? This is childish. This is pedantic to the highest degree. Leave that alone, please. So I say all of that to say, this was my first time hooping, because I was, like many of you, very averse to it. And I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm just saying everything isn't for you to like anyway. Like, don't be like the Christians in my comments. If you see something that you don't like but actually isn't harming anybody, what the fuck does that have to do with you? You know? So it was the same way when I don't like when Black people say that, "Oh, white people can't sing." It's like, what? Like, what? Like, everything doesn't have to be retrofitted for your taste in order to be valuable. And here's a hint, okay? If you look around and other people are enjoying it, then even though you don't get it, maybe they do. And so maybe it's not for you. And so I think sometimes it's just best to recognize that something is, not for you, especially if it's not harmful and it's not cultural. And performance is not harmful, it's not damaging. And performance is not damaging. You know, someone singing when they preach and talking about all the times that God, well, that part is damaging. See, the context, the content is damaging, not the art form. And so I just encourage you to be careful with that. And don't think that's ever a conversation that you're going to be able to have with me lightfully, because I will not be in your amen corner with that one. Um, and that's not just because I'm a former preacher. That's also because I am a performer as well. And so that's just like, I just find it hypocritical, you know, like it's weird, it's very weird. Well, maybe it's not hypocritical, because people do make the same content, make the same type of comments on Christian Bale's Batman. And so let me balance everything I just said by, which I think I may have done that by saying, "No, you have the right to feel that way." A lot of people didn't like, "I'm Batman." A lot of people didn't like that shit. I wasn't bothered by it, because this is an artist portrayal and there's like 50, 11 Batman. So why would I be mad at any one of them that don't get it right? I mean, how the fuck do you get fiction right anyway? Like, how do you fiction right? I feel like those words are incongruent, because even when you say, "Well, it's about the author's intention," let me tell you something about, as a person who is an author who's building a very expansive universe, There's really no such thing as author's intent. There's a thing of author's idea. The character is becoming alive as we write it, and it changes because such is the life form of art. Art is and will always be in the eye of the beholder. You know, nobody creates art just for themselves, except for people making excuses for not making it. All right, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop. All right, okay. So, oh yeah, so I preach this, and what I preached is, you know, and this I preached. I want to say praught. What I praught was because preached just sounds so wrong, and I remember one preacher used to say preachment. But okay, so he happened upon a particular place and spent the night there because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of the place and made it support for his head. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I preached here, but I have to read the rest to give it context. And he had a dream, and behold, a ladder was set upon the earth, and with its top reaching to heaven, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending, going up and coming down. Hallelujah. Then behold, the Lord was standing above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your descendants. There's a two ways to read that one, and both are accurate. All right, so all right. Your descendants will also be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and in you and in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Again, that one did not age well. But if we do make the connection and we do resolve on the consensus that modern day Israelis are the descendants of ancient Jews, then we actually have quite a few Nobel Prize winners in that category. So in that sense, hey, L'chaim, shalom. You know, I tried it. And to be honest, I am not that hip to Jewish culture. I know more about Hebraic culture than I know about Jewish culture, and I am not a beast even when it comes to Hebraic culture. I know about as much about it as I know maybe of Greek mythology. It's been a passing interest. So much so that I do include a lot of these elements into my novels. Like I do have, like I have this expansive world, expansive, not expensive, expansive. Yeah, I have this expansive world in my novels, and we have vampires, we have werewolves, we have Jesus, but Jesus is actually three people, not the Trinity, you know, but it's, we play around. We have a lot of fun. And then we have aliens. We have lots and lots of aliens. We have aliens that crash landed on the Earth, like I want to say 500 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion, kind of you know, speculating, and this is speculative fiction for the most part, speculating that these aliens crash landed on the planet 500 million years ago and are part of the catalyst for that Cambrian explosion. But among the crew, if you will, are also some descendants of humans from a future Earth, from an Earth that suffered a catastrophe when, unbeknownst to regular society, Earth starts taking on additional mass and additional hydrogen. And at first it's celebrated and everybody gets really rich and you have global prosperity for a time, which unfortunately leads to a place where more and more and more people become less and less interested in science, which is almost a real parable about what has happened to the American economy. And so as less and less people become interested in science, there are less and less people who are studying the phenomenon of the Earth getting extra mass and extra hydrogen. Where is this coming from? And so eventually the Earth does explode. It's a process called stellification. The Earth actually becomes a star, and then our solar system ends up with two stars. But some people make it away, but the explosion is so powerful that it sends these people way, 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 way far away from still within our galaxy, but far away from our solar system. They land somewhere in what used to be the Taurus constellation, and they've been living there for a while, and and millions of years later end up being a part of this vessel that makes it back to Earth, which at the time they don't even know is Earth. So, and that's just one of like a billion stories because, again, hyper productive. I think probably when I die, they're going to do an autopsy on me and be like, hey, bro, like 1,500 people lived in this dude's head. We are surprised he didn't go full split on people because, which I do warn people sometimes. I've been known to warn people to be like, hey, there's a whole fool that lives inside of here. Be very careful. Be very careful, okay? I'm not saying this is a facade, but I am saying there's a fool. There's a fool. Don't poke him. Nah, actually, I'm much more disciplined than that. But I can yeah I tell you I can have some fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So, oh yeah. So what I preached was, or at least how I open it up, and again, it's just to give you some insight into urban church, was this fact about him setting his head down, or that it happened upon a particular place, and as he spent the night there, because the sun had set. He spends the night here because the sun had set. And I remember walking to people through. It's very thematic. And I enjoy stuff like this. I know people because of the baggage of church, they're like, oh, this is manipulation. But acting is manipulation. Performance is manipulation. But just because it's manipulation in that sense doesn't mean it has to have a negative intent. When you are making pizza dough, you have to manipulate the dough. Okay. So yes, I will give you that using these vocal influxes are manipulative as you use them, but I would not say that they're malintent. Um, Anybody who really thinks that, I don't think they really know any pastors for real. It's the outside looking in, and I shouldn't have to tell you that that's subjective as fuck. And so I'd encourage you to actually have some conversations with some people. You don't even have to go to their churches, just have some conversations, see what you find out. And what you find out is that none of these people are devils. These are all people. They're all people, man. And the sooner we can realize that, the sooner we can help everybody involved. Does that make sense? I hope so. It makes sense to me. The truth of the matter is, and even though I'm guilty of it too, you can't help people while dehumanizing them at the same time. You can't help people. And this was actually one of the reasons I stopped being a Christian. You can't help people by assuming you know who they are before actually getting to know them. And that was one of the things that I realized that everybody who I've ever went to advice for within the Christian faith, that was this behavior that they had. They would not acclimate themselves with the details in order to be able to give proper advice. I think that's a slippery slope that we should be mindful of on this side as well. You know, so I preached. Many of you didn't show up here until the sun had set. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh yeah. And that was, please understand, most of the things that especially black preachers and urban preachers, period, because a lot of urban preachers they're getting their stilo from the black church. This is for sure. Um, but except for Joel. Joel is in a world of his own. Joel and Joyce Myers, they've stayed true. All right, white folks, they have stayed true. Paula White, we gave her back to y'all though, so y'all can have Paula back. It was nice having her over here preaching like black folks for a while, but y'all can have her back. We'll return that one. I don't know if y'all have ever watched the Dave Chappelle show back in the day before the controversy. But well, there was controversy back then too. But back in the day, they used to do the race. Like, what is it? It's like the race draft, the racial draft. Yeah, had Tiger Woods in it and everything. I think they even had Connie Lee Chung at one point. It was bad, but we will gladly trade Paula White. Like y'all can have that one back. Sorry. Maybe it's a damaged goods type of thing. I don't know, but yikes, right? But no. So it was that was such a poignant point for people because it was a reality. So a lot of black preaching is just using scripture to talk about things that are going on sociologically, that are going on in your community that people are dealing with in their everyday lives, and so I just took this idea of Jacob coming to this place. And mind you, this preaching is totally outside of the context of the story itself, but that's what a lot of black preachers did, which is why a lot of black theology is in trouble, because it's not rooted in the actual context. But that's also why black preaching is so beautiful, because it's not rooted in biblical context. So it was this idea that many people don't come to church until it gets dark in their lives. But luckily at Rock City, we were leaving the light on for you. Oh man, it was beautiful stuff. And that's just poetic. I didn't need the Bible to do that. That's poetry. The problem is, at the time, I wasn't recognizing that it was just poetry. I wasn't recognizing that it was just performance. Well, by that time, I was the preaching part. But even the words, if I would have known better after every poetic, flowery type of word I said, that was nice, I'd be like, all right, now let me get you back grounded in reality, though. Which you shouldn't have to do, right? So when people are listening to music that has these poetic or flowery words, that are, not necessarily grounded in reality, but are just beautiful things to think about, you don't have to explain that to them. You don't have to tell them, all right, now, same thing with movies. You don't have to tell anybody, like, okay, now I know this kid, after wishing really hard, could fly. Don't you try that shit. But so we allow ourselves to be inspired by performance. We allow ourselves to be inspired by things that are not true. In many ways, it's not just something that we do in church. The only difference is, in church, is that we are attached to the idea, that this is true. So, for example, motivational speakers, many of them are not believers. That's actually why they became motivational speakers. Some of them had the option to be a pastor, or motivational speaker, and it became, well, I don't want to get trapped in this belief system, so I'll become a motivational speaker. But if you'll notice, some of them, and I'm not excusing them here, because some of them have said some things just as damaging that are said in church, but many of them do use flowery and poetic languages when they're sharing kind of stories, to kind of help encourage people. But of course, they're not all the time, because there is a lot of magical thinking in the motivational community too. And that's one of the reasons I don't style myself as a motivational speaker. Like, I didn't want to be that. In a sense that I didn't want to be a vessel of magical thinking, But I don't see. I'm wrestling with that thought even now, because it's not the magical thinking that's ultimately the problem. We think magically all the time. We have all types of magical thoughts. It's when you make magical thinking a way of life that that becomes the issue. We should be able to hear people use poetic language and flowery language and appreciate the art of it, because that's what it is. And so I'm not trying to deprive churches of their art forms. I know some people do that, and I've addressed some of that, but I just want them to be safer and healthier places, all the way down, Um, but no, I especially black churches. I'm a black man, and so I enjoy it. I enjoy the music. I enjoy the loud preaching. I enjoy the hooping. I enjoy the singing. I'm a musician as well. I enjoy the bands. Like, oh my goodness. But again, that's cultural, because as loud as our churches are, so are our colleges. When we do our battle of the bands and things like that. So, but anyway, I really did enjoy preaching that aspect of, and you can see how that little bit I said has not much to really do here. Like, Jacob wasn't, even though Jacob, it's a parallel, because Jacob is kind of going through a dark place in his life, but he didn't go to this place to find God, right? But of course, that wasn't the point. That wasn't something that somebody could have picked apart. They would have, you would have had a hard time picking apart my sermons, because I was somewhat different. I was calculated, in a lot of ways, and I was always careful to try not to preach anything that I didn't believe, you know. Which is why when I came to the place that, oh, I don't think I believe any of this, I literally stopped preaching that same week. I remember my executive assistant at the church. I called her into the office, literally cried on her shoulder, and said, "I don't feel qualified to be anybody's pastor right now. This is not something that I can. It's not even that I don't even believe it anymore. I don't believe that it's helpful, you know." And so that was a hard place to get to. Um, in an easy place there was just realizing that, oh man, people can have absolutely healthy, incredibly fulfilled lives without this, you know, or without trying to live their lives according to this, you know. Um, beautiful stories in here. Now, mind you, as much as I pick at this stuff, I pick at this stuff, you know, mainly for the sake of the trolls, you know. But I actually enjoy going through, or at least remembering what I thought about these stories, and I find human endeavor beautiful. Period, and all of these books are the works of humans. You know. All right. This seems good. Where did we stop at? The ladder was descending up and down. Your descendants will also be like the dust of the earth. Yep. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Come on now, if that's not some good preaching. But then that's the part. Because remember, I say my problem is content. Content. I have done what I have promised you. There was a time that somebody was prophesying over me in the church, and it's something that I was becoming increasingly annoyed with, because they'd make these grand prophecies like, "Oh, this time next year you're gonna have a house. This time next year you're gonna have this. This time next year nations will know your name." And it'd be like all this stuff. And so this lady was prophesying, and she said, "By this time next year, God is going to put the keys of a large SUV in your hands for the work that you must do." And mind you, I was like, this is probably around the time I'm 21, 22, and I am still in abject poverty. I think I was probably driving a Ford Escort Pony, which I paid $1 for. And the brakes were not great on it. It was a hatchback, and the hatchback couldn't close. And it didn't work a lot. This may have been when I was walking to church. I don't know. But in the middle of her prophesying, I just stopped her and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "Yes. If a year from now I don't have that truck, can I come to you for the keys?" And she's like, "Oh, no, no, no. God has promised." I said, "Well, let God tell me. Let God tell me." And just to kind of give you where I was at that time, the reason I kind of made that distinction was I was tired of getting my hopes up, you know, and I was like, I have the right not to be gaslit like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I said, we're not going to do this. If God isn't saying it himself, where I hear it audibly and I can look at somebody else and say, "You heard that too?" I don't want you to tell me. That's how it goes. And that, obviously, you can see how that's a slippery slope. You know, I still stayed in ministry for about 8 years after that. You know, I was either 20 or 21, somewhere around that area. But I still stayed in ministry about 8 years after that. But you can see the decline for sure. And so I don't like that part. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Now when I say I don't like that, I'm saying not that I don't like it in the story. That's the story. I don't like this for preaching stuff, you know, because I definitely preach stuff like that. God is not going to leave you. God will not leave you nor forsake you. Even if you make your bed in hell, God is there with you. And then one day I realized, like, oh, well, that makes no sense. At least at least as according to a major Christian faction who says hell. No, hell is not a place where God condemns you. It's simply a place where God's presence is not. Like, I swear, these people cannot hear themselves when they talk. Omnipresent God, a place where God's presence is not. Hello. The math isn't mathing there. You get it? You get it? But anyway, so I was gonna say something else there, and I lost it. But then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "The Lord is certainly in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." We had some good preaching on this part. You know, walked up on church and didn't even know it. You didn't even know it. Ooh, yeah, we were an urban kind of guy. Sorry. And he was afraid and said, read that part. So Jacob, much longer is this? Okay, we're right at the end of this one. So Jacob got up early in the morning and took the stone that he had placed as a support for his head and set it up as a memorial stone and poured oil on top of it. These people love wasting oil. Like, I don't understand what's up with this idea of wasting oil, you know. Oh, by the way, in my Memphis, my universe novel, we also have genies. I mentioned this because genies came out of lamps. And for those who don't know, those were oil lamps that they came out of. And the oldest type of oil lamps kind of look like bongs or bowls. You know what a rip bowl is? Bowl. You know, bowl. Yep, they come from those. And so our genie comes from a bowl. It's a funny story, but not like a modern bowl. Oh, that will be a twist because his story does extend. He's a very ancient being. It does extend into modern times, and so we're going to update him. Yeah, that's fun. Okay, sorry for that. Jacob got up early in the morning, took the stone, poured the oil on top, and then he named that place Bethel, house of God, which is interestingly close to Bethul. Now, linguistics don't actually work that way, so I do want to point that out. I will make some jokes here, but please understand when I'm being facetious. You can't draw linguistic conclusions just by saying, "Oh, these words look alike," right? Now, sometimes you'll do that and you'll be right. A broken clock can be right. You know, what was it, once a day or twice a day? I'm not going to think about that right now because I'm going to get it wrong. But you get the point. Then he named the place Bethel. Previously, the name of the city had been Luz or Luz. Jacob also made a vow saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take and give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone, which I have set up as a memorial stone, will be God's house. Of everything that you give me, I will assuredly give a tenth to you." And so this is the second time we've seen this idea of a tenth, and in this case, we're given this tenth to God, which I don't know how we're going to do that, you know. But the first time we see the tenth going from Abraham to Melchizedek, which there are some fringe theologians who say that tenth went from Melchizedek to Abraham, that Melchizedek paid tithes to Abraham. But it's always weird when people talk about the tithe thing, and y'all know I have thoughts on it. I'm not going to do a rant on it right now. But when you're looking at this, one of the things I encourage people to do is remember you're reading a book about humans and about human interactions. You know, whether it's fictional or not, it's still about humans and human interaction. And so what you're seeing here when you see this tenth is no different than fealty, which is something that lords, you know, kind of pay to the king, you know, or no difference than the modern tax system. And so it is a system of upkeep, a system of maintenance, a system to sustain. And so in this case, and this is actually a place that I was, and I think I've shared this before, when I was on, you know, my fringes, is that when I read over stuff like this when I was on the fringes, I begin to imagine God as not a spiritual character that existed in the heavens, but I begin to imagine God more so as a distant king. And you can see how that still kind of fits, right? Especially Black churches, we do have that type of poetic. We wax poetic when it comes to God, soon coming king. Hallelujah. But I viewed God in this sense, as more of a human character that was likely the king or emperor of this great empire that was a long way off from these people, and so that these people are actually interacting with the representative or representatives of these kings that they sometimes called angels, which means nothing more than messengers. And so it was a way of me challenging myself to remove superstition from reading it, and it was just a really fun thought experiment, and again, actually served to give me a greater sense of appreciation, sort of, for the stories themselves. Because then it's just like reading Game of Thrones. It's just like, oh dang, the Mad King done sent these people down here to destroy, you know, King's Landing or whatever. It's like Daenerys. At that moment. So then it actually becomes a more enjoyable fiction book for me. Um, but yeah, so yeah, they do the tithe. But there was this other thing about, if God be with me and keep this and will keep me on this journey that I take and give me food to eat and garments to wear, I'll return to my father's house, and then that Lord will be my God. But I don't know if y'all remember, Abraham was rich. The Bible went through great, or the authors went through great detail to show us this process by which Abraham gets rich, you know? And so, and we see kind of the same things in Isaac's life. And so, why is Jacob all of a sudden talking like he's poor, you know? Hmm. Oh, and I was going to mention another thing. Something that was said earlier was, every place, if you lie in this place, I'll give it to you. And it's like, that tracks. That seems to be the story. Every place that one of these people tell a lie in, God seems to reward them by giving them the riches of that place. So that double thing right there. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these messages. Jacob and his brother. And next week, we're going to pick up with Jacob and Rachel. So we'll get to learn a little bit about this mystery lady and why she's so significant to Jacob's story. And then we really start getting into the meat of this story. Because right now we're in Genesis chapter 28. So we're going to pick up 29. And then I believe it's 30 through 37 is 30 through 32 is this precursor to Joseph. And then everything after that is Joseph's story, which then you really begin to see how the entire book of Genesis is just this. It's the precursor. It's meant to be this backstory to why or how this group of people ended up in Egypt, or at least as from Exodus perspective. So when you read it that way, if you just read Genesis and Exodus, you would think that, oh yeah, Genesis is just is giving me this backstory for Exodus. Well, Exodus is also a backstory, and what you begin to realize is that this whole thing is trying to create this narrative that explains, for this group of people at this group of time, not to be confused with modern day Christians or even modern day Jews, but this group of people who were impacted by this story. This was their way of giving themselves a narrative, a way of answering the question, how did we get here and where do we go from here? And so what you do in these situations, you build a backdrop. And of course, around this time, because we were still in the height of our superstition, you want your origin story to start with a powerful God. Not just any powerful God, but the big one, the one who created everything. It's a way of ego worshiping, if you will, a way to worship your own ego. One of the things I realized years ago, I guess partly of being an atheist, is that nobody's belief about God makes God bigger. Nobody's belief about God makes that God more real. People's belief in God or gods typically only do something for themselves. And so this is, we have, at least from my perspective, we create gods, or we created gods rather, to give ourselves some type of meaning. And I think the weirdest trap we've created for ourselves is we created these gods to give ourselves meaning and now do not even realize that we are the ones capable of giving things meaning. So I've enjoyed this journey and I look forward to picking back up with Genesis chapter 29 next week, picking up with a little bit of Laban's treachery and Jacob meeting Rachel. And there's another one too. What's her name? Leah. Rachel and Leah. So that's going to be a fun time. Old fair-eyed Leah. That's going to be a fun time, but that's all I have for now. Listen, if you enjoyed the content, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider joining one of our community entry points, consider volunteering. We're always looking for volunteers. You can feel free to email me at dl@dldd.us, and you can visit our website, dldd.us. But a funny thing happened this week. We've exceeded our bandwidth. So my website is temporarily down. I've got to increase my bandwidth. That's not something that I saw happening because we have quite a bit of bandwidth. And so that means we're getting a lot more attention than we expected. And not just more than we expected. It's actually more than we can afford right now. So I have to rebudget my bandwidth stuff and make sure we can get that back up. But in the meantime, you can email me. But yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say. Hey, make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're engaging with us. Share this to somebody who may benefit from this, whether they need a laugh, whether they need a little bit of inspiration, or maybe they just need something to think through and talk through. Maybe this video can be their ASMR for the night. But anyway, thank you all so much. I love you all. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. Holla.